There's people in Glasgow. There was people queuing at the door of a pub to watch
England lose.
To watch England lose, but it was a Women's World Cup final. I think it's sick that there's this much.
See, that's where I get on my nerves a little bit. I'm really sorry, Ed. I'm sorry. I don't want to fall out with you, but
please do. This would be great content. Come on, let's go. Have the argument.
No, I don't. Right now, I can't say anything because it's just going to sound like I'm responding to you, which I am.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of like, oh, I'm so glad it's the women's and I'm so glad it's, the girls are doing so well. I just find it so patronising because I think, well, they're playing football. They're not like, dogs jumping through hoops. And I don't know. I just don't really think that we're going to reach a good point of equity until we see the game as the game of football rather than the game of women's football.
But is it not important to recognise that there is a chasm in support, in attention, and that is being surmounted?
But I think that the narrative then goes to, oh, but well done to the girls, rather than, hey, why don't we watch this? Why do all the sponsors flock to the men's game? Why are we so obsessed with it that way? Rather than it kind of, okay, right. So taking you out of the equation entirely. So you can go and kiss and shit and piss over there. Rishi Sunak put out a letter this weekend and in which he was like, I'm so excited. This is so inspiring for my daughters, which on the face of it is a nice letter, except it's not, because basically what he's feeding into is this thing that men can only really understand women or get behind them or care about them if they have their own vested interests. So they can only understand something that women are doing if it's through the lens of, I have a sister or a daughter or a mother. And I just find it just deeply unhelpful for the entire movement. It's like when we talk, okay, I'm going from football to rape. That's where I'm going. When we talk about sexual assault or anything like that, loads of men will come out and they'll go, well, I wouldn't want this happening to my sister, so I'm going to fight against it. And it's like, okay, but what about the fact that they're also a person? I just don't want this happening to another person. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think about the football. Can you not just enjoy it for the sport that it is?
If, to be pragmatic for a second, if we accept that a lot of people are sexist, that women face a high degree of prejudice and also discrimination based on that prejudice, whilst it is suboptimal that men are not able to engage with women and women's rights without using the lens of wife, sister, mother, do we say, okay, that's not great, but at least they are engaging. At least they're trying to.
No.
Okay, why?
I think that it makes you second class to men. I think it's creating a difference that I don't think needs to exist. I think it's like you either enjoy watching football or you don't, and no one is making you do it and no one is making you have a political opinion on it. You can just... It's for fun, right? It's for our consumption and for fun. You don't need to lay your heavy political opinions on it. I don't know. I just think it comes across with the patronising tone I just felt was all over Twitter, which was like, oh, my daughters are watching this in front of the television and I've never been so proud to watch these girls do so well. It's like when you're watching the men's game, you never say, oh, my little boy could grow up and do this eventually. Your little boy's already in football camp. Your little boy's already playing football every single week. So why is there such a marked difference in your mind when it comes to women? I don't get it. Sorry about that.
No, it's really interesting. It's giving me pause for thought, to be honest with you. It's making me think, because that is one of the key things that people have been saying about the tournament, right? Is that it's, inspiring the next generation of footballers that they're so proud to see these women going on and doing so well and having, something that their children can look up to. And I hadn't really thought about it in the terms that you're describing.
Well, we've never had to inspire children to want to play football. They do want to play football. We just have to convince men who fund local community practices or fund local schools that actually it's worth putting your money into women's football. Those are the people we're convincing, not the children who want to play it.
Yeah, and somewhat depressingly, we were making a big deal about Prince William didn't go, right? Prince William didn't fly to Australia to watch the final, and he's the president of the FA. So you're kind of sitting there going, oh, why is the president of the FA not at the first World Cup final England have participated in since 1966? President of the Spanish FA was there on stage, and he fucking grabbed that player by the face and kissed her on the lips.
Yeah.
at the trophy fucking collection thing.
Yeah, and no shit. No shit and pissing.
Oh.
Sorry.
They might have done after.
You looked at me so concerned. Your eyes.
I thought you meant like no shit as in like, I don't know, you're making
Yeah, I think I no shit. Yeah, he did kiss her. I was like, well, yeah. I don't think that's normal.
Yeah, or that Ed actually was also on the pitch kissing all of the female players.
pissing and shitting everywhere.
Someone get him out of here.
Showing everyone his floor pan.
Yeah, and apparently he went back into the changing room after the game as well and was like, we're paying for you all to go on holiday to Ibiza where I will marry Jennifer, which is the player he kissed. Yeah.
Oh really? She said afterwards she said it wasn't nice, but then she walked it back and said it was a warm embrace between two friends.
Yeah, so I saw she on Instagram Live. They're all on Instagram Live, right? And TikTok Live in the changing room afterwards. And someone asked her and said, what was that about? And she was like, yeah, I didn't like that. And I think she said the same on TV. Then after that, the Spanish FA starts circulating a statement allegedly on her behalf, being like, it's an emotional moment and we're embracing because, we just won the World Cup. I have questions about whether or not she did actually say that. Particularly because despite the criticisms that we've just made and talking about the game here, the Lionesses are much further on in terms of their sort of battle for gender equality than the Spanish female team is. So day before the final, all of the back pages, not a single one leads with the fact that they're about to play in a World Cup final. It's all sort of like La Liga club games and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. There was actually a bit of a players' revolt as well amongst that squad against the coach. They all said, we're not going to play for him. They said that he was not like physically abusive, but like mentally and emotionally was sort of like manipulating them and they didn't want to play for him. So a lot of like big star players dropped out. The Spanish FA appointed an intermediary, a woman, to mediate between the psycho and the squad, and then just kept him on and they came back and played for him. So there's an ongoing dispute between the female players and the Spanish FA. And so for him to then, plant a big wet one on one of their faces in front of the world's cameras, like as well, the psychology of that I think is really interesting, right? Because it's like the biggest moment of her career, probably possibly of her life. She's just won the World Cup. And the world is watching, or at least a significant part of the world is watching. All the cameras pointed at you, and then he like grabs you by the face and kisses you, and you're like, well, what the hell do I do?
I'm telling you, there is not one moment in time that a man can't somehow usurp himself into it. Like they always just have to make themselves front and centre.
And make it all about them. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, Marina Hyde wrote something similar.
Shit, really?
Yeah.
That's so fucking hot.
No, she wrote something about Mason Greenwood, right?
She wrote it a lot better, of course.
No, she said something about like how useless men will never cease in their ability to like suck the limelight away. So, because this stuff with Mason Greenwood's been happening, and Man U have said that one of the reasons they haven't made a decision on it yet is because they want to consult with the women's team. Several of the players are at the World Cup playing for England. Katie Zellum being one, for example, Ella Toone as well, I think, and others. So they couldn't make a decision because they had to talk to the players. They're in Australia. They can't exactly phone them up and be like, by the way, what do you think about this? Because they've got the small matter of trying to win a World Cup on their hands. So because of that, on those players' Instagrams, every single post they've been doing is like freak Man U fans being like, you've got to get Greenwood back in the team. You've got to get Greenwood back in the team. And Marina's column, she was talking about Infantino as well because he said something mental again. But it was just like, don't underestimate a man's ability to suck all of the limelight and oxygen out of a room and make it all about them, no matter how useless and terrible they are, which was a good piece.
Well, she's always doing good pieces, isn't she?
Yeah, she does.
There is something fascinating about the Premier League, though, and the lengths that football fans will go to defend them. I mean, like...
It's insane.
It is absolutely insane. It's like, guys, please, have some sex. Just do something else. Do something else for 1 minute.
They're travelling up and down the country on buses, pissing, shitting, kissing other men.
Yeah. But what is that? Why is it that there is such a high profile of potential sexual assaults or sexual harassment that allegedly happens around the Premier League? Like, what is that? Is it because we've over sponsored them or over, filled their pockets a little bit too large, or what is that?
I think quite a lot of it has to do with the fact that in the modern era, these players become incredibly famous and incredibly wealthy at an increasingly younger age. So and it's not the case for every player, right? But for a lot of them, they'll be in and around professional setups from the age of 16, 17, 18. And yeah, maybe, okay, their first team debut might come later, but already you're distinguished from your school peers. You're distinguished from pretty much everyone you know, because you're already, even if you're on like a pretty small time academy contract, you're already earning more than what most of your mates are earning. It's that thing, right, about celebrities, and Macaulay Culkin is the example that's always given, but others, that essentially that celebrities don't mentally develop beyond the age at which they become famous. Because at that point, you're no longer engaging with the world in the way that other human beings do. You're not learning because you're surrounded by security, your agent, your manager. You don't have to you can outsource decision making, you outsource risk. And so as a result of that, you don't personally develop anymore. I think there's a little bit of that going on with football players who become insanely wealthy and insanely famous at a very, very young age, and then don't mentally develop any further, don't also engage with society in a normal way.
Yeah, you're not socialized.
Yeah.
You don't, like, Trent Alexander-Arnold talks about, he didn't have a normal, like high school life. He said he never went to any parties because he was in the Liverpool Academy. He was like, his whole being from the age of about, say, 8 upwards was becoming a professional footballer for Liverpool. And so you don't have control, like you're not, that happens to such few people, and the only people you're interacting with on like a daily basis or on any basis really are other young boys who are also being socialized for that one purpose, and the adults around you who are trying to force you, like, to make you a professional footballer for like their benefit. So I think at that point, kind of your life and socialization isn't for your own human development or your own human goodness, I suppose.
But then why does it work then so well with like community boxing or like, boxers, they're in the gym all the time and that disciplines them and gets their mental health, spick and span. But then for some reason, if you're training for football, it's like, oh no, put your dick in anything. What's that?
Yeah, I was just thinking, listening to Ed talk then as well, I was like, you did just ask us why there are so many sort of like rapists and people guilty of sexual assault in the Premier League. And we were like, well, here's an explanation. Like we've just excused all of their atrocious behaviour.
It's not their fault that they don't choose to do it. But
they're just so rich. It's not their fault. I don't know.
I used to
they were rich 8-year-olds.